So first of all, it's not exactly no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. You're still paying payroll taxes, FICA taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes on that.
Anybody impacted by these new tax law changes, it's going to be very easy to do your tax return wrong this year.
You can potentially deduct a lot from your taxable income. If you report more than 50% of your income as tips, that might be a little suspicious.
If you have to ask if you're gaming the system or pushing the envelope, that's probably a sign that you are. What do we need to know about the new rules about overtime pay? Welcome back to Connecting the Dollars. I'm Amanda Vaught here with Emily Agosto. Today we're going to be discussing the new tax provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which we are going to refer to as OB3. Today we're going to be talking about the no tax on overtime and no tax on tips. So what do you think is important for people to know about these new provisions, Emily?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not exactly no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. There's qualifications for both. You're still paying payroll taxes, so FICA taxes, so Social Security and Medicare taxes on that. And you're also paying state income tax on that. Most likely, I don't think any states have taken the no tax on tips legislation yet, or probably will not, in my opinion. But yeah, it's important because you can potentially deduct a lot from your taxable income. The limit is up to $25,000. There is a phase out for income if you make $150,000 or more as a single filer or $300,000 as a joint filer. Then if you hit those limits, your deduction is reduced. I think it's going to affect a lot of people. The other thing to keep in mind is you have to be within a qualified industry. So that would be any industry in which you would receive tips customarily. For people who work in restaurants, in the service industry, anytime there is a gratuity added, the patron pays, that is not considered a tip. That is deductible on your tax return. So pay attention to your W-2 for 2025. There should be a line that separates out tips. Just do your best. We don't have the best reporting yet from the IRS. Also, be aware that in the event you are audited by the IRS or they just want more information about this deduction, which they do a lot, be sure to have something to back it up, whether that's a spreadsheet or some notes you made. We don't really know exactly what they're going to be looking for specifically, but it's better to have more documentation than not. So it's a little bit tricky.
And that's on the employee side. On the employer side, or a small business owner or solo person that accepts tips, how are they thinking about that?
Yeah, so that's important as well. If you're a small business owner, you work for yourself in maybe the salon industry where tips are customary, be sure to have your income total separated out by tips and by services. I think the IRS is going to be looking at normal amounts. If you report more than 50% of your income as tips, that might be a little suspicious. So again, just use your best judgment if you don't have good records for 2025 and be sure to start keeping really good records for 2026.
If you have to ask if you're gaming the system or pushing the envelope, that's probably a sign that you are.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So one last thing for self-employed individuals, if your net income is only, let's say, $20,000, the tip income deduction is going to be limited. So you can't take $25,000, even if you had $25,000 in tips, after all your expenses are taken out. If you're left with less than $25,000, you can't go into negative net income. So just another thing to keep in mind. But definitely reach out to your tax preparer, talk to a tax planner, talk to us, send us questions, because this is going to be a bit complicated and we're still waiting for some final clarification from the IRS that we may or may not receive. So it's going to be a little tricky this year.
Yeah. And I think because this is a new thing, your tax withholding may not have been adjusted because you're going to owe less tax at the end of the day, right? Than you might be used to. So maybe you were over withholding, maybe you need to adjust going forward.
Yeah, definitely at your employer, you can adjust your W-4 withholding. For self-employed individuals, you can take a look at your estimated tax payments you've made already for the year, and maybe you can make a lower one for the fourth quarter of 2025. So it will definitely affect a lot of people, I think.
And what do we need to know about the new rules about overtime pay?
Yeah, so overtime is pretty similar. I don't think this would apply to self-employed individuals. So you can't really pay yourself overtime. So this would just be for people who are W-2 employees or possibly contractors, depending on the situation. But you would have to have a normal hourly rate that you are paid from your employer. If you, let's say, make $20 an hour and then your overtime rate is $30 an hour, it's only the difference between your base pay and the new overtime rate that is going to qualify for that overtime deduction. So if you have 3 hours at $30 an hour, you're not going to be able to deduct $90. You're only going to be able to deduct $30, which is 3 hours times the $10 premium. The limit is $12,500 deduction for single filers, $25,000 for joint filers. And let's see, there's also a phase out with the income level similar to the tip income. For single filers, it's $100,000, and for joint, it's $200,000. So it is a little lower than the tip income phase out.
Yeah. And this only applies to certain industries, correct?
Right. And another thing we're still waiting on clarification is about the FSLA, the Fair Standard Labor Act. I forget if I'm
FLSA, yes.
FLSA. I switched them
Same
up.
thing.
Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yeah.
There is some overtime that may fall outside of that act, which may not qualify for this deduction. And this one's actually going to be a little more tricky to figure out on your tax return because, unlike tips, overtime is not typically reported on your W-2. It's not reported at all. It will only be on your pay stub. I don't know if employers, some of them are doing the work for you and maybe sending you a nice printout from their payroll system. That would be amazing. But for 2025, you may just have to pull your payroll pay stubs and do your best. Again, talk to a tax planner, a tax preparer, talk to us, ask us questions, because it is going to be tricky to substantiate all that if you don't have good records.
Yeah. I think anybody impacted by these new tax law changes, it's going to be very easy to do your tax return wrong this year.
Right.
There's
And
just so many, and it's never, the headline is no tax on tips, but then actually there's exceptions and different people impacted different ways and phase outs, and it's never straightforward. Yeah, that was a great overview, Emily. And we'll be back to discuss some other changes impacting us based on this new OB3 law. So look for
yep,
those.
yep, keep an eye out.